So we meet today together, but at a time of division and polarization. So from your communities, what are the most pressing divisions that you see every day? And what can we do as faith leaders to help people?
The most pressing divisions. I would say that in my church, and we are a progressive, liberal, American Baptist, United Church of Christ congregation. I think the most pressing division right now is that as people of faith, I think we can forget that we are people of faith. And that we get very focused and pulled into the polarizing politics of the day. Very often we are operating from a place that is being guided, manipulated, and maneuvered by media, as opposed to grounding who we are, what we do, what we care about in our identity as followers of Jesus. So I think we are suspect to, or sensitive to getting caught up in all of the things that we're reading in the media rather than grounding ourselves in the life of Jesus Christ.
I think right now we're looking at this particularly interesting time in the world where we are becoming more and more divided, and we look at where the division seems to come from. A large part of that seems to come from what algorithm you have on your phone or your computer or your device. Who are you listening to? What are they telling you? Are we thinking before we look, or are we being told what to think? And I think that really changes the dynamics, because we're seeing ourselves move to the bottom of the brainstem in different directions, on different issues. And the reality is that the faith community has a unique opportunity, and we have a unique responsibility. Because we have the opportunity to rehumanize what politics dehumanizes. We are witnessing fatigue from polarization, moral injury from witnessing suffering that we feel powerless to stop. It is so difficult right now when we look at the world, and the grief of the world is just simply overwhelming. Pick a topic. Domestically, hyper-locally, globally. Where is it in our hearts? What can we do? Faith offers a language for lament and offers tools for repair. And I believe that healing begins by naming pain in sacred spaces and staying in dialogue long enough to rediscover one another's humanity. Faith leaders, we have that space. We can hold that space, and we can help bring accountability and bring grace wherever possible. Healing requires the truth-telling and the accompaniment, and communities heal when they can process grief together. And I think that's what we have to begin with. I heard in the last session, we have been given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And actually my mentor, Rabbi Alpha Sugarman of Blessed Memory, used to say, that's all it says. He was from Atlanta. That God gives us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We should always listen twice as much as we speak. And so I'm glad that we're here to not just speak with one another, but to deeply listen to one another.
You want?
Well, in my community, I think the most divisive issue is politics, and well, it's politics coupled with hyper self-centeredness. In today's world, any issue that comes up, people could agree on it on maybe personal level or even religious level, but once the politics comes in, then we all begin to assume that what we believe or what we agree is the best or is the right answer. And so like issues anywhere between, whether it's an election that's coming up or what's going on between Palestine and Israel, you bring issues up and people jump straight into what they personally believe, sometimes avoiding, statistics or what is proven to be factual. And so, as faith leaders, I think we come into these spaces, we have the opportunity that people come into the spaces to listen to us or to learn from us. They believe somehow that we have the answers, the guidance, whether it's based on the Quran or the Bible or the Torah, that we will give them an unbiased answer or guidance. And so, some of the things that we've been doing, especially in my mosque and the community, is guiding people based on what is in the Quran, even if personally you disagree with it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I went last, because if you think about the answers you just heard, right, they are dramatically different than the answers that we hear in society. You heard about lament, you heard about self-centeredness, you heard about putting our faith above our politics. You did not hear an answer like gun control, right, or immigration. I run an organization that's a network of about 5,000 faith leaders whose goal is to live out their faith in a way that makes our country less divided. It's going really well, which is a joke. It's okay to laugh. But what is central to that is that faith is the answer, right? So for me as a Christian, my job is to love my enemies and my neighbors. And that is my polarization intervention, right? Not a workshop or a dialogue or a training. It's living out my faith in the way that I interact in the world. And I go to these conferences where, we have these conversations and you hear people say things like, we're so divided and we're so isolated. If only there was a way to get people to come together every weekend and meet and have relationships and hear about values. There's 116 million of us who do that on a regular basis, which is up, by the way, from the last couple of years. And I think our job is to live that out in such a way that it makes more people want to join us. And that's the work that I'm involved in.
So, as Andrew said, you've spoken powerfully about the essence of our faith and to step back from the algorithms and the static of the world. What's the local project that you've seen you've been involved in that helps embody what better community looks like of the kinds you described?
I'm going to reflect back to 2005, really 2004. President George W. Bush had put out an initiative called the Family Justice Center. We now have 5 of them here in the city. But Brooklyn was supposed to be one of the first 15 cities in America to get a Family Justice Center. And one of the requirements for the actual grant that we received was that it had to have interfaith spiritual caregiving. It was required. And the New York Board of Rabbis signed on to be one of the 6 faith community leaders in this center. So in Brooklyn, I had an office that I shared with our colleagues, our faith leaders across the city, mostly in Brooklyn. And what we started doing was working with clients who were coming in who were looking for answers to some of the most pressing and difficult questions in their lives. Focusing on gender-based violence, focusing on intimate partner abuse, talking about children who are living in households with domestic violence and child abuse, and helping them find answers to their questions, finding faith in their hearts for healing, and in helping to build resilience. Today, that still exists. And I actually just wrote a paper about this and presented it at a conference because in most parts of the world, they don't really think about faith when they're thinking about crisis. And families in crisis need faith communities for healing. And it's an incredible example of what we can do. We can change the narrative and create safer spaces.
Iman, you talked a bit about how you engage your community.
So I'll mention 2 projects. One which is ending, unfortunately, the one which is ongoing. Back in 2023, I had a privilege to work with the ICNY with Reverend Chloe Breyer, and we worked to find houses of worship to provide shelter for asylum seekers. And so one of the most beautiful things that happened one time where we had a lot of asylum seekers logged in one mosque, but the mosque could not afford to feed them because of the numbers. And so my colleague, who is here today, he was at a rally and he meets a Buddhist leader, and then he asked him, "Do you guys happen to have a kitchen that we could cook?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I do." And then we had a grant from the LDS to give us an amount of $10,000 worth of food, dry food. So we got the food from LDS. It's cooked in a temple by Muslims, Christians, Jews, and it's sent to a mosque for Muslims to eat. And I think Reverend Toby mentioned is that's one of the most beautiful example of what faith can do to solve social problems. When we come together and put our faith not aside, but put it in front as a reason why we're doing what we're doing, and solve or serve the people of God, the people that God had created. That one has ended, unfortunately. But currently, I work with an organization called the Gambian Youth Organization, GYO, in the Bronx. And every other week, we do a food pantry. And when you come outside and see the line at 12 p.m. waiting to be served at 2 p.m., it is maybe 1 or 2% African. It is majority Latino. We have African American and very few Muslims. Majority of them are not Muslim. The organization is run by Muslims. And we come out every day. We go out sometimes in the middle of the night on Friday to go get the food items. And we're not thinking, who are we serving? Are they Muslims? Are they Africans? We're thinking we're serving humans. And by doing that, we've heard stories from grandmas to uncles to children who are abandoned and find meaning or purpose in their faith. And I think if all faith leaders, look at the work that they do to solve social problems, beyond just we are serving our faith tradition to we are serving the people of God, I think we'll do a very good job, or a better job than we're doing currently.
Thank you. Andrew, local project that you think really helps, that you've seen make a difference?
Yeah, so, we're always asking the question, how can we get people to work together who would not otherwise be in relationship and who actually disagree actively about many things but can agree on something together? So one of the projects we did early on brought together a mosque in Virginia, a synagogue in Washington, D.C., and a Southern Baptist church in West Virginia. And there's plenty of things that they disagree with each other about, but they all agreed that the opioid crisis in both Washington and in West Virginia was a crisis that needed to be addressed. And so they built relationships, they did service projects together, but also in the course of doing things like service project together, they encountered each other's communities, traditions, histories. The church ended up bringing a group of their youth to Washington to go to the Holocaust Museum, to go to Shabbat services. They had some women from West Virginia go to the mosque. Folks from DC and Virginia went out to West Virginia. So that was one of the projects that I think really exemplifies what we're trying to do.
So our project, Bishop, you are a part of. So Riverside is comprised of people who come from a variety of different faith traditions and no faith tradition, a lot of adults who did not grow up in the church. And we happen to be situated in Harlem near a lot of wonderful institutions like the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine, Union Theological Seminary, Jewish Theological Seminary, and the Interfaith Center of New York. In March, we, in conversation, asked the question, what could we be doing to witness to our faith and witness to democracy? So those organizations started in March gathering at Columbus Circle at 5:30 every Monday. So we call it Multi-Faith Mondays, Witness to Democracy. What's powerful about it, one, is that all of these institutions who have some different points of view on any number of things, but all agree that our faith can witness to democracy. What does it mean to be in community with people and to love people simply because they're human and simply because they are God's people? And so to powerfully gather for 30 tight minutes every Monday at Columbus Circle to sing songs from a variety of traditions, to pray the prayers, and to say it's not right that our neighbors are being snatched from the street. It's not right what the administration in Washington, D.C. is doing. I don't have to give you the list, you know the list. But it's also powerful as people are walking through the circle to see rabbis, imams, Catholic priests, Christian ministers gathered together, because I believe people want to see that we talk to each other, that we care about each other, that we can show up for each other and move the work of justice forward even when it's not benefiting us personally. And as I said, those crowds have been growing. People are so grateful. They'll walk by, like New Yorkers do. We're so glad you're doing that. Thank you so much. It's just a wonderful space to be in. It's joyful. And to do it every 7 days, it is becoming church for some people. It's becoming synagogue and mosque because it's human beings touching and agreeing that we will present a different witness to the world than the one that we're seeing in our media feeds.
So, y'all talked about stepping out from the media feeds, using different language, the language of lament and grief, and
Our language. How do we use narrative? You mentioned changing the narrative. I think that's so important. Each of you speak powerfully to your communities and beyond. What's the way in which you've been able to help change the narrative from the anger, the polarization, the static, all the things we are consumed by every day? How do we change that? Andrew?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, grounding ourselves in knowing that our faith has the ability to tell a really different story.
Yeah.
To me, the most moving thing I've seen, and the best example of this I've seen recently, was the LDS fundraiser for the family of the shooter in Michigan. And what an incredible way to live out your faith and tell a story to the American people that they're just not seeing or thinking about, I think, in general. But what we hear from faith leaders all across the spectrum a lot of the time is exhaustion. We hear, I've got a purple congregation, or I've got a congregation that has put politics above their faith. I'm burned out. I work too many hours. I get calls in the middle of the night about people's marriages, and now I get calls in the middle of the night about people wanting my sermon to have an explicit reference to some political issue. 40% of Christian pastors have thought about quitting in the last few years. So when we think about narrative, part of it is, I think it's important for faith leaders who feel able to do this kind of work, for those stories to be heard so that a lot of other faith leaders don't feel alone. And they say, I'm not crazy, I'm not alone, and there is a way out. And I'm seeing other people do the thing that I want to be doing in the world. And I think that's really important.
Adrian?
Please share the question again. How are we telling stories?
So how do we change the narrative?
Yes.
The step back from all that we're hearing and begin to tell a different story, as you said, grounded in the essence of our faith.
Right. So I love that text in our holy book that talks about God doing a new thing and do you not perceive it? My background is in dance and in the arts, and so we lean very heavily into that. And I love what Toni Morrison says about difficult times, which is that is the time when artists go to work. So we have set themes at Riverside like imagine the impossible, planting seeds. We use music and dance and movement and beauty to remind people that there is another way of being in the world. I think the Multi-Faith Monday work that we do in Columbus Circle does that. It reminds people that folks still care about each other. We still can sing together. We still can make meals for one another, share our kitchens. So the invitation to our congregation and with and to our partners is always, what is the creative thing that we could be doing? Because we are creative people made in the image of a creative God. So we love to remind people, you were made to create. You were made for beauty. You were made to dance and to write poetry and to tell stories, because we are people of the book, we are people of story, and we are creatives.
Imam?
In the Quran, there's a verse that God says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, which translates to, is there anyone better than the one who invite people to God's way and emulate the best kind of behavior or conduct and say, I am among the submissive ones? What this teaches us as faith leaders is that we don't have to do what the masses are doing. We don't have to be like others, because we have a peculiar responsibility, which is to model God's way. And so being the example of what we we read from the books, be the example of what we want others to see, instead of trying to tell them what they should be or what they should become, I think is the best way to change the narrative. I grew up in a very conservative household, and when I say conservative, like Muslim household, where the other faith is not tolerated at all, right? To some extent for rightful reasons, because they've seen people who tolerate other faith and they end up leaving the faith. So people scared and they said, no, do not tolerate. But the more I made friends, talked to other people from different faiths, I realized that there's so much that I could learn from them, that it's not necessarily about how I believe, whether there's one God or three God or whatever the case may be, that there's more to this faith thing than just my, specific difference. And so what I started to do, in the community, every now and then I'll invite someone who is not of my faith. They may not talk about faith or God, but they will talk about, let's say, how to manage your wealth, your money better, or how to build a better relationship with your spouse. And people begin to see, oh, this guy, he's not a Muslim, he's not a Christian, maybe he's even an atheist, but he's sitting in the masjid and he's teaching us how to build a better relationship. And by doing so, we've opened the doors so that people now can, be comfortable meeting people of other faith, working with them, conversing with them, learning from them, and being that one family that we all talk about.
Rabbi?
It's interesting. I'm listening to what everyone is saying, and I think about the resilience of our of faith leaders and faith communities. We have withstood the test of time. Right? Our narratives haven't gone away. Our rituals and our traditions are rich and deep. And our communities possess a moral vocabulary and relational trust and networks that extend deep into not just across the world, but deep into neighborhoods. We're there. When things go wrong, when things go south, when there are problems in our communities, we are the ones who show up. We show up for our congregants and our non-congregants.
That's right.
The people who are in our house of worship and those who are outside of our house of worship. It's what we do. We don't go, oh, I'm sorry, you're not a member. I can't help you. You got to go to the next house of worship and maybe they'll help. And I remember once being in a congregation, I was out in Columbus, Ohio, and I was teaching a group of rabbis about domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, family violence, the spectrum. And I had a rabbi sit there and go, well, I've been a rabbi for 25 years and no one's ever come to talk to me about domestic violence. It just doesn't exist. And the social worker came up to me afterwards and said, his congregants go to the Episcopal priest down the road.
Wow.
Because the Episcopal priest talks about domestic violence. So how do we shift the narratives? When I was a congregational rabbi a number of years ago, 20 plus years ago at this point, I made the first Friday night of the month, regardless of what holiday it was or whatever it was, talking about social issues. And I did it in storytelling. So it was also Children's Shabbat. So it was like, the kids are there, the families are here. Let's talk about the issues. And, God bless, our sacred texts are just full of family dysfunction. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's there to tell us what's wrong so we can work together to figure out how to fix it. It helps us to be aspirational. And when we do that together, we're so much stronger. So I love the fact that you're going from congregation to congregation and sharing each other's stories. And when we're coming together on Mondays, I think it's a beautiful tapestry that you're starting to weave. And if we can figure out how to take that and not just be the leaders doing that, but really have our congregants sitting together, our community sitting one by one across the same table, learning together and doing the good works, going out and bringing to community, right? Whether it's cooking a meal or it's sheltering people or finding shelter for people. I think we have a unique opportunity. In fact, at NYU, there's a class in interfaith dialogue action. It's led by Rabbi Sarna and Imam Latif. And the first thing they do for the course is that they make them go do a service project together. He's like, because you can't really study together and do the challenging work until you build trust.
That's right.
And I think that's an important example for all of us. We need to do the trust building.
Well, let's talk a bit about trust. One of the things that concerns me is the decrease in trust in our institutions, some of which comes from outside of us, and some, speaking from my own faith, comes from mistakes that we've made, things we've done within our traditions. What do you see from your perspectives about the decline in trust in institutions, in religious communities, and what do we do to rebuild and restore?
So trust is rebuilt through transparency, humility, and presence. People trust what they can see and they can touch. Faith is a different story. Faith is sometimes something we can't quite wrap our arms around, but we are striving to do so. People trust what they can see, what they can touch, and when faith leaders listen without being defensive, right, which is, I think, sometimes really hard for our institutions to do, and if we can partner without hierarchy, so we can sit together at the table as equals, not just I'm the institution or I'm the leader and you are not. And show up consistently in times of crisis. Trust begins slowly, slowly, slowly to return. In practice, that means opening our sanctuaries for real, hard, difficult dialogue, engaging in community listening sessions, and co-designing initiatives with and not for those we serve. They have to be co-creators in our communities. Creating solutions with communities and not for them transforms the faith from institution into a real relationship, which is, I think, often missing. It's not as relational as it should be. And rebuilding trust is less about messaging and much more about the modeling that we heard about before. Faith leaders can embody reliability, accountability, and shared service. And that work begins with all of us who have chosen to be here on a Thursday.
Andrew?
I don't have anything to do on Thursdays usually, so this is good. I think, in a really divided society, we become really good at speaking to our own side, and really good, and really bad at persuading anyone who isn't in our group. And when you aren't trusted, your ability to convince anyone of anything is down. So I would actually throw a twist on this. I know all of us are kind of multi-faith people. We're all here. We like being in multi-faith spaces. It's exciting. My own family is a multi-faith space because I grew up in a secular Jewish home and I converted to Christianity. But I would actually argue that the most important thing we can do is work within our own community to make our own community as healthy as possible so that we can earn trust. So a lot of the work we do is actually, most of the work we do is like groups of evangelical pastors talking to each other, groups of Muslim leaders talking to each other. Multi-faith is a great thing that has to be part of it, but we got to take care of our own house, build trust by being the best version of ourselves, and I think that comes first.
It's a big question, so I will try to come at one little slice of it. So what's coming up for me is I have a 15-year-old daughter, and if you have teenagers, they smell fakeness. And so she and her peers maybe don't have the highest opinion about the church. They see people fighting, they see financial malfeasance, they see child sex abuse, they see the way women are treated, the way queer people are treated. They don't really want to have much to do with us. So I think I'm just thinking a lot about the need to confess and the need to ask for forgiveness. I think a lot about my relationship with my kid. And when I was growing up, my parents would never admit that they'd done anything wrong, and they never apologized or asked for forgiveness. So I do that with my kid. And what I love as she's getting older is she's becoming a person who can say, I was not skillful in the way I did that. I was not skillful in the way I said that. But it's because I will say, Mom was really tired last night, and when I snapped at you, that was not about you, that was about me. I think we need more of that in our faith communities, where we can say, as we recently did at my church, the council made a decision and did not include the congregation. We're sorry. We messed up. We should have talked to you before we made this very public announcement, and we will do better. I think that is starting to heal a lot of the old pain, just the admission that we messed up. And then I think also our ability as institutions and people that make them up to extend grace. We're going to step on each other's toes, so we both need to forgive, and we both need to say, we accept your apology.
It's beautiful.
I always say to my students that while religion claims perfection, the institutions that guard religions are not.
Yeah.
Right? Men or humans have the tendency to kind of twist religion to suit their own personal ambitions. When I first came to this country in 2012, one of the issues I figured out right away in our community, our Muslim or African Muslim community, is that there was a mistrust between the older and the imams and then the youth. And then here I was, having studied from Ghana, come here. Well, I'm not older to be part of the older guys, but at the same time, when I sit with my fellow youth, I kind of know more about the faith than they do. So it became very clear that the reason why they didn't trust the adults, i.e. became the lack of trust in the institution or the Islamic tradition, was because we as faith leaders, sometimes we say things that aren't exactly what's in the scriptures. Whether we fear that if we say exactly what's in there, people might not be interested, or people might be scared away, or people might go astray by taking that route. And what I've come to learn is that people love honesty. If you tell a young person, a teenager, exactly what it is, and approach him in a way that kind of look at him as a human instead of just another person to control, they have the tendency to just accept it. Even if they may not agree with you 100%. They be like, you know what, I don't get it, but I hear where you're coming from. I had a 2-hour conversation with a student 2 weeks ago about God's justice. This is an atheist student who's just asking questions. And she said, I don't understand why people would do good on this earth and still get punished in the hereafter just because they didn't believe in God. And I said to her, if they didn't believe that heaven and earth existed, you and I shouldn't worry about where they're going to go, because they don't even worry about it by themselves. But I think what she took out from that conversation, that long conversation, was that God is not saying that everybody who don't believe him, you're going to hellfire and there's going to be this big hellfire everybody's going to be put in. And then I explained to her that even in heaven, there's levels, right? The fact that we both go to heaven doesn't mean we're all going to the same place. People have different things promised to them. She left there. One of the first feedback she gave me was, I still don't see how that makes sense. But she's like, I appreciate that explanation. Nobody has ever explained to me this way before. And so if we tell things as is, people would listen, and they'll respect, and they'll trust that institution.
You both talked about youth, and I don't know about y'all, but every time I'm out with one of our congregations, what people ask about is, how do we get young people to come back, in our case, to church? That's every time, every place is a concern of our communities, and maybe the communities you serve too. Studies show that young people yearn for community, but feel disillusioned by the institutions that we're part of. What do we do? Do you think we need new structures, new ways of being, or simply better ways of inviting into the communities that have been? Imam, how do you handle this?
I love the statistics that was shown earlier about the percentage of how many people are, the age of those who are religious and those who are not. Right. And it showed that in the next, I think 20 years, almost 50% of Americans will be either non-religious or so on. And it is true in most faiths. They didn't show the Islamic statistics, but we see the mosques or the masjids, and decisions are being made by people who cannot relate or who do not relate to the youth. You cannot build a space for people that you don't understand. And there's the need for us as faith leaders to make space for some of these young people to be on leadership role, on tables where decisions are made, so they bring perspective and not just, okay, what do you have to say, and then leave what they say aside, but actually put respect and substance to what they bring onto the table. And it might sound ridiculous when they say it for you as an adult, but to them, that's their reality. And if we allow them to have that space where their reality is being respected, they will be compelled to show up. I'll give you an example. I was thinking of events to do this semester with my students. I was like, I don't know what to do. I've done all these events last year. And then one of my interns, she said, let's go apple picking. And I'm like, that's something I did with my third graders. What do you mean apple picking? She's like, no, people would love it. So I said, all right. So I floated the idea in one of our events. And when we put out the registration form, we have about 30-something people sign up to go apple picking. These are like 20 years and above, and they are super excited. I was like, okay, we have too many people, then we can put in the vans. Let me put a commitment fee to it. So I said, okay, in order to go, you have to pay $30 commitment fee. And now I'm trying to figure out where to put the remaining 2 people, because I got the buses filled, and people still need space. What this show is, when we go there, we're going to talk about the changes in seasons and kind of have a reflection about God and how God brings all these things to be. But I couldn't get them there if I had thought of it from my perspective as an imam, as an older person. I let them bring that suggestion, and I put meaning to it, and I put substance to it. And now we have all these young people signing up. And by the way, if any of you work in a university, it's really hard to get 30 people to sign up for an event on a holiday, which is this coming Monday, by the way, unless they actually want to.
Good. Thank you. Great example. Rabbi.
Wow. I remember a number of years ago, we had a meeting of rabbinic, rabbis at the New York Board of Rabbis, and we brought in young rabbis to kind of teach us about, how do we reach the millennials. Mm-hmm. And what we found out is that, well, like most things that young people tell adults, we're doing it wrong. And I would just actually want to pick up something that Adrian, that you mentioned before, because kids can smell. Right. What's fakeness or authenticity really fast. They're really, really good at it. Because young people are seeking authenticity and agency. They want to be able to choose what they're doing. They want to have a sense of ownership of what their thoughts are, their ideas are, and how they spend their time. Mm-hmm. They're less interested in belonging to an institution, and they are so interested in belonging with others around shared purpose. Mm-hmm. That's what they want. Mm-hmm. They want to be with like-minded people doing things that matter to them. And so models that work are things that include youth-led interfaith councils, trauma-informed support groups, things that really help them move the needle, and having a place at the table, not just to come and present what they think, but to actually help to work on the solutions with their adults. I think it's really interesting. We are all mic'd, and the one thing that I think is missing from this panel, dare I say, is a young person. I mean, a young person. Like college age young person, yeah. So, because I think that their answer to this question would be particularly telling. Mm. And we need to share the microphone with them. Yeah. We don't have all the answers as the adults. They should be here with us. And faith communities can become incubators for civic imagination. Truly, I think that they hold so many of the answers, and they are the leaders not just of tomorrow, they are the leaders of today. And so Places where young people can experiment are in our communities. They can experiment with leadership and find meaning through service and justice seeking. And I think if we find those tools and we give them to them, teach them, mentor them, don't control them, that they will be more likely to come and to share with us in building our communities, rebuilding and expanding our communities for generations to come.
At least in the Episcopal Church, what young person means ends up being on a sliding scale nowadays. We grade on a curve. So, Andrew,
So I don't count? Is that what
you
you're saying?
absolutely count.
Oh, I
In the
might count.
Episcopal Church, I think we're all young people.
No, those are great. I mean, I think, first of all, anecdotally, what I hear from a lot of faith leaders is that young people are streaming into their congregations. My congregation is like 92% 4-year-olds, so it's particularly effective. But I think that we have a culture that sells us politics, greed, lust, postmodernism, and treats it as God.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know about you all, but I'm at the age, I'm old enough now, where when I need to eat real food and I eat gummy bears, my body knows that I ate gummy bears. And I think our society is being given sugar, and what they're really craving is something real. And they're craving someone willing to apologize. They're craving honesty. And so what I don't want our answer to be is to conform to culture. I don't want 20-minute church so people can go back to YouTube. I don't want church that dodges what time the football games come on so they don't have to compete. I don't want church that has an AI pastor. Is that a thing? Probably a thing.
It will be soon enough.
Soon enough.
It's starting to be.
So we have something that people deeply need and have wanted for what, thousands of years? And just because we are told by culture that we are outdated or, whatever, or just because we've made a lot of mistakes ourselves, because we're humans and all of us make mistakes, some of them are very big mistakes, does not mean that we should be conforming ourselves to a culture that is actually looking for what we have.
Right. Yes. So I love the church. I think it is one of the last institutions where we get to come together across age and all sorts of difference. And so the young people that I work with, they're very clear about what they want. They want this. And it could be that we're in an urban setting, but they want to be with people that are different from them. I mean, this is New York City, so they are if they're in public schools, they're eating bagels and lox, and they're having curry, and they're having all the food, all the friends, all the feelings, and all the stuff, and they want all of that stuff. They want to meet people who are Muslim and Buddhist and no faith, and they ask questions like, why is it a problem for you adults? These are my people, these are my friends. I don't care that they're a different faith. I don't care that they're queer. I don't care that they don't believe in God. I love them and I care about them. So they want interfaith, multi-faith engagement. And I've always served multiracial, multicultural churches, and I wanted to ask Reverend Burge, I feel like those churches are always growing, because at least in this city, families come and they're like, we want our children to grow up with people who are different from them. The second thing, I think young people want us to help them close the gap, as I can't remember, one of the panelists said, between my week and my weekend. One of them said to me, it's easier to come out as gay than it is to come out as Christian. And that's a problem. I think they want their living to be informed by, in my case, the teachings of Jesus, and to not be ashamed that they vote the way they vote, because they care about the least of these. And finally, I think they want to wrest the Christian story back from the folks who say that Jesus was on the side of the wealthy, the dominant, the violent, and to remind people that the story of our Savior is a story about the last, the least, and the left out.
Right.
And they are pissed that we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So when we are in certain places, like the White House, like City Hall, like the governor's office, those are places that they see aligned with power, and they're like, what are you doing? They are snatching people from the street. They are dropping bombs in Gaza. They are weaponizing anti-Semitism for domination. And so they're like, we're done. We're done. You guys are fake and hypocritical, and you teach us to love our neighbor as ourselves, and then you kill people and say that that's what God wants.
Thank you for that.
So folks have come today to take something back to their communities.
Yeah.
What's the most important, most urgent step people can take as we all go back to our communities this weekend? One thing, Andrew.
You know, you've been mixing up the order the whole time. Now I have to go first. I think if you want your congregation, your community to be a certain way, I think oftentimes faith leaders only hear the angry voices. So if you want them to do multi-faith work, if you want them to do something like that, go tell them. Make sure that they hear that. I think that's a very concrete thing you can do.
Good. Rabbi.
Oh boy, everything is urgent. I feel that that is the biggest challenge that we have, and so I want to just take a moment and reflect on the fact that hope lives in our children and youth, and the youth that I meet every day from around the world. Last November, if you haven't met Imam Shadul is here. His daughter was with me last November in Abu Dhabi, where we brought together 52 high school students from 23 countries. And to be clear, I had a child from Lebanon and 4 children from Jordan and Palestinian children and Israeli children and US children and children who are living in conflict zones. And they were able to drown out the noise long enough to see their shared humanity. They built trust and relationship, and that is possible because it is true and honest, and it's what we have in common. So we need to figure out how to drown out some of the noise to get back to the real priorities of our communities, which is we both bleed the same color red. We are all in community together. We are all one human family. Those children sat down with His Highness, the Deputy Prime Minister of the UAE, and they said, you heard Rabbi Potasnik say it earlier today, you know, in math, 1 + 1 = 2, right? Everybody, yes, we all took math. But in faith, 1 + 1 = 1. We're one human family. And the children said this to His Highness, and he goes, no, that's not math. And the children looked at him and goes, no, Your Highness, that is humanity. And I think we have to remember that. That is the most urgent thing we can do. It's not just for us, it's for them.
One thing.
I would encourage us to lean into these centuries-old faith traditions. I remind my congregation all the time, again, this coming together across generation at a table, whether that is a communion table where we're breaking bread, or it's a Shabbat table where we're sharing a meal. There's something about gathering and breaking bread that's very powerful. But also the foot washing. So the bishop and I, this coming Good Friday, we will go to Rikers and do foot washing, which is symbolic of how we serve. These traditions are traditions because they are meaningful and powerful. And I think we, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Churches, I can't remember his name, he said that his church was near Disney, and he said, we will never out-Disney Disney. I will never forget that he said that. But to Andrew's point, we have something that the world is trying to get, and the world can't do what we can do, which is authentic connection, intergenerational engagement, and just gathering around the table with people. Last thing, a lot of the young folks in our city are away from their parents and grandparents, but they have church parents and grandparents, and a lot of grandparents are away from their grandchildren. And where else do folks come together across those generations but in our houses of worship? So I say lean into our traditions.
Imam, last word.
So the Quran, Allah says, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُم, advising the leaders of faith that we need to respect and see the value in all the people that we are leading. If we do so, understanding that we don't have all the answers, we will build a stronger community, we'll build a stronger next generation, because they will see value in what they believe, because we show them that it's possible.
Okay. Help me thank our panel. And I think all of us want to say thank you to the organizers of today.
Oh, yes.
Who have brought us together.
I'm going to just take a minute here and recognize someone who's made a very significant contribution in this area. Elder Baines.
It's my pleasure to announce and present the award for building better communities to His Holiness Mahant Swami Maharaj. Since 2016, Mahant Swami Maharaj has served as the spiritual leader for the BAPS Swami Narayan Sanstha, a global Hindu fellowship sustained by volunteers. He's guided the creation of cultural landmarks and mandirs which serve as symbols of peace, fellowship, and dialogue across faiths and across nations. Under his guidance, BAPS volunteers have mobilized around the world to serve society in concrete ways and tangible ways, providing education, clean water, sanitation, and healthcare to millions, uplifting entire villages and generations in times of crisis, from wildfires and floods to hurricanes around the world, delivering relief. Equally important is his commitment to education and empowerment. Through mentorship programs, youth activities, and leadership training, BAPS helps individuals and communities build brighter futures. Recognizing that strong families are foundation of strong communities, he's encouraged initiatives that promote family harmony, mental well-being, and resilience. He's championed women's leadership and empowerment, and ensuring that their voices and contributions shape every dimension of BAPS service. He works hand in hand with civic organizations, governments, NGOs, and made BAPS a trusted partner in strengthening neighborhoods and uplifting society. At the heart of his work is a simple but profound principle. True spirituality expresses itself in actually building better communities. His Holiness embodies this by transforming faith into service and compassion, and ultimately into action, leaving an enduring legacy of faith and unity and hope. It's my pleasure to present this award, and accepting it on behalf of Mahant Swami Maharaj is Arti Patel, a senior volunteer at BAPS.
On behalf of His Holiness Mahant Swami Maharaj and the Global BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha, I am deeply honored to accept this award for building better communities. His Holiness teaches that where there is unity, and all of you have spoken so profoundly to it, where there is unity, there is divinity. And this recognition truly belongs to all of us. Following the legacy of his Guru Pramukh Swami Maharaj, who reminded us that in the joy of others lies our own, Mahant Swami Maharaj continues to transform faith into service, building mandirs and landmarks that unite communities, mobilizing humanitarian efforts worldwide, and nurturing youth. Again, as we spoke earlier, heard from our panel, nurturing youth to lead with integrity and empathy. At its heart, his message is simple and profound. Faith finds its highest and best expression when it uplifts others. So I do want to thank the organizers for uplifting others and continuing to build the bridges. Thank you once again.